Hello and welcome back to Autistic After Hours. I'm your host Ashra, and today we're going to be talking about PMDD or premenstrual dysphoric disorder. I wanted to talk about this today because, to be honest, it's something that I just want to learn more about because it's something that I think I might be struggling with. Before we get into the episode, quick reminder to follow Autistic After Hours on Instagram. That's where I post original content every single week. It's also where I post polls every Monday so that you can vote for episode topics. And a special thank you to everyone watching over on YouTube. As a reminder, you can always watch Autistic After Hours podcast episodes on YouTube on my main account at Ashra Louisa. There is an entire playlist dedicated to Autistic After Hours episodes. The goal of this episode today is going to be to give a very high-level summary of what PMDD is, to define it, to talk about what the criteria is, to reduce the shame around experiencing it, and offer some practical resources and ways of navigating it if you are struggling with PMDD. I do want to note that I am not a professional, I am not a doctor, and so this should really be a starting off point for you to learn about PMDD and to then from here go ahead and research it for yourself, consult with an expert, a professional, a doctor. All of the information today is coming through the subjective interpretation of myself. So I am also a flawed human. I can make mistakes. I might misunderstand or misword something. So please take everything with a grain of salt. Know that I'm trying my best, but I can make mistakes and misinterpret things just like anybody else can. So please use this as a starting off point to then do your own research and consult with professional from here if that is something that you want to do. I also want to say that I'm going to do my best to use gender inclusive and affirming language today, which means that I will be using the term AFAB, meaning assigned female at birth. And I want to just be clear that PMDD is not something that only women experience. It's something that anyone who menstruates might be experiencing. It's not limited by gender. It's something that anybody who goes through the hormonal changes associated with menstruation might be experiencing. I want to start off by talking about the DSM-5 criteria for premenstrual dysphoric disorder or PMDD. It states that at least 5 symptoms must be experienced within the final week before menses, improving shortly after menstruation begins, and minimal or absent post-menses. Of the following symptoms that I'm going to read out, you must be experiencing at least 5 of them in the final week before you menstruate. 1 or more emotional symptoms, so something like mood swings, irritability, depressed mood, or anxiety. 1 or more additional symptoms such as fatigue, concentration difficulty, appetite or sleep changes, overwhelmed feeling, or physical symptoms like bloating, breast tenderness, or pain. Symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment. The symptoms are not better explained by another disorder. These symptoms are confirmed by prospective daily ratings across at least 2 cycles. The symptoms are not due to substance use or medical conditions. An important clarification and distinction here is that PMDD is distinct from PMS. It is a hormone-triggered mood disorder that disrupts daily life. PMDD is often misdiagnosed like many other things that AFAB individuals experience. Many AFAB individuals are misdiagnosed when it comes to autism, when it comes to borderline personality disorder, when it comes to really most mental health related conditions and also physical things that we might be going through. So many individuals are misdiagnosed, are disregarded, and PMDD is the very same. And so many individuals who are dealing with PMDD, struggling with PMDD, may be misdiagnosed, and some common misdiagnoses are major depressive disorder, anxiety disorders, bipolar 2 or borderline personality disorder, and especially in autistic AFAB people, baseline conditions that are associated with being autistic might mislead doctors from pursuing a PMDD diagnosis because they might attribute your symptoms to, oh, this is just what you're experiencing because you're autistic. This is just what you're experiencing because X, Y, or Z. They may disregard the fact that this is very much a valid and real separate thing that may be exacerbated because of your autistic traits, but is something that you're experiencing in addition to your autistic traits. Now, I want to get into some research about autism and PMDD. I'm going to very briefly touch on all of this, and as always, all of the references will be cited in the show notes in case you want to explore them further. I'm also going to briefly touch upon some of the limitations that are part of these studies, just so that we can get a more full picture of the research and to know that there are limitations and things that we should take into consideration when interpreting this data. A study in 2008 by Obeidi and Puri found that 92% of autistic AFAB people met PMDD criteria compared to just 11% of non-autistic counterparts. But some limitations of this study were that there is a very small inpatient sample used, and they also focused on individuals with intellectual disabilities, so not a broadly representative study of all autistic people. Some findings from the EDS clinic: autistic and ADHD AFAB people often report increased sensitivity to physical, emotional, and sensory stimuli during PMS. These symptoms compound, intensifying issues with sensory sensitivity, emotional dysregulation, etc. This study, therefore, is kind of alluding to the idea that certain autistic traits, like increased sensitivity to sensory stimuli, might exacerbate PMS symptoms, leading to PMDD symptoms. Now, some general hormonal sensitivity commentary that I found is that autistic people often live with heightened sensory sensitivity, emotional intensity, and a finely tuned nervous system, so PMDD can be more likely for individuals that are dealing with those things. And lastly, this is a neurobiological angle on the sensory emotional overlap of autism and PMDD. It states here that people affected by PMDD often report heightened discomfort related to sensory issues. These sensory sensitivities exacerbate the emotional and cognitive symptoms, and a limitation of this study was that they do not specifically study autism. They focused more on PMDD in general. It's still a useful piece of information about sensory sensitivities and how people with PMDD do report heightened discomfort related to sensory issues, and this is something in common with many autistic experiences. So I think it's fair to say, anecdotally at least, that symptoms that many autistic people experience when it comes to heightened sensitivity to sensory stimuli and emotional stimuli can exacerbate or affect PMS symptoms. And this can lead to PMS symptoms being more strongly experienced, and this might be leading to PMDD symptoms. It's also, again, important to remember that PMDD is a true hormone disorder. There is a true hormonal aspect to what's happening. It's not just necessarily an increased sensitivity because you're autistic. It's also that there is a hormonal aspect as well. Taking both of those things into account is important. So, for example, knowing that as an autistic person, I may be more sensitive to what I'm experiencing inside of my body, and if I'm experiencing PMDD, that means that there is a true hormonal disruption happening, and that is something that I'm responding to. Now I want to talk about some real life examples about how PMDD can feel and look throughout the monthly cycle. So in the ovulation to mid-follicular phase, you might have brief clarity, emotional calm, and better focus, or simply just report less feelings of overwhelm. And then from the early to mid-luteal, so this is the 7 to 10 days before menstruation, you may be experiencing increased irritability, rejection sensitivity, and low frustration tolerance. Some people describe it as actually feeling more autistic, so your autistic symptoms are being exacerbated or more obvious. You may also experience more executive functioning struggles at this point. In the late luteal phase, which is 3 to 5 days before menstruation, you may be experiencing deep despair, mood crashes, derealization, shutdowns, withdrawal, just feeling like completely exhausted, like your autistic traits are extremely increased and you're feeling extremely sensitive and you're feeling very, very down, very, very dysregulated, feeling very deep despair and mood dysregulation. And then during menstruation, the first 1 to 3 days of menstruation, you may have some dissipation of emotional intensity, but still be experiencing extreme fatigue. And then post-menstruation, which is the follicular phase, you may be experiencing a return to the baseline of functioning. You may have this kind of peak clarity window where you're feeling really good, but you may also be feeling some anxiety about knowing that all of this is going to repeat again. Now let's talk about some useful tips and practices for if you are or think you might be experiencing PMDD. So one thing is you can start using tracking tools, and this is super important if you are planning on pursuing an official diagnosis of PMDD, especially if you are autistic or otherwise neurodivergent, just because, like I mentioned before, doctors may be especially prone to misdiagnosing or brushing you off if you are experiencing another condition. They may just attribute it to that. So making sure that you have very clear tracking of the data so that you can prove that you do meet the criteria. Next is to ease executive load during the times where you're struggling the most. So just be gentle on yourself if you can. Try to plan, so do more when you're feeling good, with the knowledge that at certain points of your cycle, you may need to really just stay in bed and completely rest, because doing anything more than that might be too much for you. And then taking physical and sensory care, so knowing that if you are at a point in your cycle where you're feeling particularly sensitive to sensory things, take extra accommodations for yourself. Utilize any accommodations that feel necessary for you before you're in a crisis. Wear your noise-canceling headphones, wear sunglasses, make sure you're wearing comfortable clothing. Just try to do whatever you can to ease sensory and physical discomfort. Now, some more medical or therapeutic support options. Some people use SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. You can also look into hormonal contraceptives, and these can help to stabilize mood for some individuals by balancing out your hormones. You can also look into neurodiversity affirming care, talking with a therapist about what that might look like for you, and also just accessing support through group communities, online communities where other people are going through similar experiences to you, just to help you feel less alone. To end this episode, I want to let you know that you are not alone in what you're going through. You're not being dramatic. These are very real things that are extremely difficult to navigate, especially on your own, and especially when historically you might have been told you're just being dramatic, you just need to be stronger, you just need to get over it. All of these things that so many of us have heard. Know that you are not alone, you are valid, and what you're going through is very difficult, and it's something that I am trying to learn about and accept as well, because even after doing this episode, I think this is something I'm struggling with, and I really would love to learn more and learn ways to access support, because it's not easy. In some of my adult autism support groups, especially in the women and non-binary group series that I hold, so many people spoke about this. So many people spoke about the depths of despair that they experience when it comes to their menstruation and their cycle. And it's so saddening and frustrating that there is an extreme lack of support when it comes to PMDD, an extreme lack of recognition. So just know that you're not alone, and if you experience it, there are ways to work through it, and hopefully with growing research, things will get even more affirming, things will get even more accessible. I know for so many of us, it is completely inaccessible to see a doctor, to seek out medication, to seek out hormone balancing medications, anything like that. And so at this point, for some of us, the best resource is just to track and try to take care of ourselves the best that we can. As always, remember that autistic adults exist. We deserve awareness, support, community, and acceptance, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye.